Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Productivity Mastery. A very special episode 180, 180. So it means there's 179 more episodes. One of my favorite episodes to date is the episode with my guest today, who's coming back, Winston Ben Clements. My man, how are you doing today?
Oh, really good. Thank you for having me back. It's been a few years since we spoke.
Crazy, huh? It's like it's been yesterday, man.
Yeah, we were saying it was just before the pandemic, so it feels like even the whole world has changed since we last spoke.
Absolutely, man. Hey, look, it's been a long time since I had you on the pod. By the way, for those listening, my neighbors, I'm recording this episode from home. My neighbors just decided that they have to drill and start drilling. So if you hear some drilling sounds, it's not coming from Winston, it's coming from me. But you gotta take full ownership, man. We committed to do the podcast now. I'm gonna do the
That's it.
podcast. So
We're
let's
here
let's
now.
hope that they'll finish soon. But hey, Winston, give me a bit of an overview, and for the audience, for the people listening, uh, tell me a bit about your story, about your background, about your upbringing, so we can get a context, and then we can start talking about ownership and a life of no excuses.
Yeah, thank you. And maybe the most interesting or maybe the most unique part of my story is that I was born with a condition known as brittle bones disorder. And that condition means that when you see me, I don't think we've actually met in person yet, Stoyan, but you've seen me on video and you've seen images. And probably one of the first things that you notice is that I'm a little bit smaller than the average person. So I'm probably about 3 feet tall and I use a wheelchair for my mobility. And so I tend to have that, confusion when people meet me sometimes is he a grown up? Is he a child? How should I approach him? Because it's clear that he's got some kind of disability going on here. And so, that condition is something that I was born with. It means that my bones would fracture more easier than the average person. So, of course, I wanted to do all the things that the other kids were doing when I was growing up. I wanted to, you know, play sports and, run around and push and do everything that children do. But the difference was when they fell over, they could just dust themselves off and carry on. When I fell over, it probably mean like a broken arm or a broken leg. So that's how the condition played out for me. But what I always say is that I was also born into, I won the family lottery because I was born into a family that were very, very well equipped to not just support me, but also push me out of my comfort zone. So they would say things like, hey, you know what? If you want to play football, I mean, you're in a wheelchair, but if you want to play football, then, you go there, go to the playground and figure it out. And so that would sometimes look like, okay, going to the playground and realizing, of course, I'm not going to become the next Cristiano Ronaldo, but maybe I could be the referee. Maybe I could blow the whistle and call the fouls and still be involved in something that I love, but in my own unique and creative way. And I think some of that mindset is what I've carried into, I guess, being an adult now. I'm an adult now, and into, I guess my corporate career where I worked in technology for about 10 years. And then I did a big pivot, which I'm sure we'll talk about, into doing more diversity and inclusion work and doing speaking and content creation. So I've always had that ability from a young age to just try something and see if I can deliver it in my own unique way.
So you mentioned it was very easy for you to break a bone, and you actually, maybe because of this adventurous spirit of yours, ended up breaking a lot of bones. I remember last time you mentioned, correct me if I'm wrong, that you probably broke around 150 bones since you were 12 or something like that.
Yeah, up to age 12, probably 150. And then the number went down, I guess, dramatically because I became an adult, became more careful, more aware, that maybe I shouldn't be trying to do a bungee jump or something like that with my condition. So up to age 12, it was about 150. I would say in total, up to now, and I'm in my 30s now, it's probably about 200 lifetime fractures.
Man, how did you deal with that? Everybody listening probably have experienced breaking a bone, and everybody can feel even when I'm speaking about it, that it's a painful, physically painful experience, but
Yeah,
also it's mentally and emotionally challenging as well. How
yeah,
did you deal with this constant, pain?
yeah. Honestly, it was quite tricky. So, and I would say, yeah, for many people who've broken a bone, you'll appreciate that. When if you break an arm, story, you really can't use that arm for about a month to 6 weeks. Um, And so for me, I think even bigger than the actual physical pain of the bone, I guess, healing again, it was more because I have this spirit of wanting to be adventurous, wanting to be creative, wanting to be independent. I prefer when I can do things myself rather than somebody helping me. And so for me, that part was even bigger than, having to have my arm in a sling for 6 weeks. And so again, honestly, I did have my up and down days. Again, my family would still encourage me. They'd still say, go to school. You've got your arm in a sling, but we don't think you should stay at home. It's clear that you're frustrated staying at home and watching TV all day. So why don't you go to school and just, even if you're not able to participate fully, at least just be there in that surrounding, learn something, see your friends. Because another thing that happened sometimes was, I'd have these injuries and then I would just be at home by myself. My sisters would go to school, my parents would go to work, so I'd just be at home, either with like a nanny or a babysitter or someone who was looking after me. And then I would find myself going into a dark place mentally because I've got the whole day to think about everything that I'm missing out on. So I think that was something that really encouraged me, having people to say, hey, you might not be 100%, but just go and show up at 50%. And it's something that I think is an important message for anyone listening to this right now. There are those days, for those of us who are entrepreneurs and building businesses, it's not every day when, you're crushing it. Some days you're showing up and you don't feel like showing up. You don't feel like waking up at 6 a.m. in the morning or tackling, that big priority that you've been avoiding. So I think those types of lessons kind of helped me to transfer again into the other things that I did later in life.
That's super interesting, man. And just to give a bit of a hint to the audience, every time I have a conversation with you, and by the way, I feel like I'm a very positive and open-minded person, right? But every time I have a conversation with you, I feel like you have this abundance mindset. You take full ownership, and you inspire me to step up my own game. How did you develop this type of mindset? Was that something you developed early on, thanks to the support of your parents and the mindset that they helped you to build, or was that a conscious decision? Hey, I need to take ownership of my life. I need to make the most out of it.
Yeah, now and by the way, I'm not perfect with, taking ownership. There are days when, I wake up and I just want to complain about life or complain about something that did not work in my favor. Um, and I can even tell you a quick story right now. I was in a situation here where, I was living in an apartment with my family and, we moved out of the apartment in December, and we always really take good care of our property where we live, make sure that the space is very well maintained. And we never had any issues with anywhere else that we lived before. So we move out, and 3 months later we get presented with a lawsuit because I'm based in the US. So a sheriff came to my house, Dorian, and presented me with a lawsuit, and I was like, what? Like, what's going on? And I opened the lawsuit, and it's my previous landlord who's now saying that, you know, that I punched holes in the walls and in the doors. I know, ridiculous, right? So me, with my brittle bones disorder, I was punching holes in the wall and in the doors. And obviously, that's extremely frustrating because that's somebody who obviously is very unethical and somebody who's trying to obviously benefit, in a way that is extremely unfair. So I remember when I received that lawsuit, I was complaining all day, story, and to my wife. Even my wife was like, "Okay, let's stop talking about this now." But it was just so ridiculous that the emotions got the better of me. So I just want to share that just to kind of phrase that, I'm not always
Mhm.
perfect either. But yeah, like going back to your question, I think it's happened in different layers. So layer one, I would say, is what I've talked a little bit about already. So it was my home, I guess, network. So that was my parents and my sisters, cousins, the people that I grew up with, all having this idea that, hey, it looks like this kid, Winston, he wants to do something. He doesn't want to just, be protected and be, what do we say? We say like covered in cotton wool. He wants to just go out there and try things. So because he's showing us that, then we're just going to encourage him. If he wants to play, let him play. If he thinks he's the next Cristiano Ronaldo, let him go and do that, right? So that was kind of layer one. And then for me, layer two was actually going to school and then again attracting the teachers, attracting the friends, attracting the people who saw the same thing in me and actually call that out of me. So, I always had teachers who would say, for example, I really enjoyed drawing in school. I consider myself to be a very good artist, and I think I was one of the best artists in my school. But I was very, very slow in my drawing, and so I had a teacher who would say, "Hey, your work is really good, so I'm gonna give you extra time to just stay behind. I will sit with you. You can use all the equipment, and I'll be there for you so that we can get you delivering the amount of pictures, the amount of paintings that are needed to pass this exam, right? So again, that's someone who went out of their way to kind of make sure that I was able to perform at my level. And then I'll share one more. I guess what when I guess developed a little bit, left education. I guess managers similarly that I worked with in the corporate world, but the one that I want to talk about is mentors and coaches that I chose to work with later. So especially when I decided to leave the corporate world and kind of focus on business and entrepreneurship, I thought, okay, you know what? I've developed some pretty good ways of operating, but entrepreneurship will demand 10 times anything that I've ever needed to produce. So I need to actually invest in myself. I need to invest in coaching, invest in mentoring. And, I had some really good coaches and mentors who, you know, basically called me on my own BS, even on those days when, again, I wasn't feeling 100%, I was making excuses. Or, for example, like in this scenario, when I was having this lawsuit drama, that kind of mentor will be like, okay, I'm gonna give you 10 minutes to just say everything that you need to say, and then we're gonna move on and we're gonna crush the goal that you're supposed to crush today. So yeah, I guess short answer, Stoyan, it's just been those layers of accountability at different stages of my life. And I feel like that's hopefully something that most people can tap into. You don't have to pay for coaching or you don't have to have the best relationship with your family, but it could be a friend, it could be a relative, a cousin, somebody. We all have that person who sees us for more than we are, right? Or more than we see ourselves. So just find that person and just align yourself to them, and that will impact how you show up in life.
Yeah, surround yourself with the people with the right mindset, the right frequency,
Hmm.
that will support you, but not just cuddle you, but support you in terms of calling you on your BS
Yeah.
when you have to. And the more you have this type of environment, the more likely you develop this type of mindset, right? Because you're constantly reinforced to be in a higher frequency. I love it, man. I love it, and I wonder if you can share some practical ideas to the people listening, those people who are listening and maybe struggle to see the glass half full. What would be some tools or practical suggestions you can offer?
Yeah, yeah. And we've all been in those situations where something happens and it just feels like it's the end of the world. I think for me, some of the practical things that have helped is one is definitely perspective. So, when something bad happens, so I use that lawsuit scenario again. When something bad happens, I guess the emotional part of us was to run away and create this picture that is so catastrophic, okay, so now you've got a lawsuit, you're gonna have to pay lots of money, it's gonna affect your finances, it's gonna affect your family, you're gonna have to go to court, it feels like you're in really, really big trouble, right? But when you actually have the right perspective, you can actually look at the thing and say, okay, this is a lawsuit, I know, and I'm sure everyone watching this knows after I've shared my story that I did not punch holes in a wall, right? And so you can just look at that and say, okay, so what's the next right thing that I can do? The next right thing that I can do is it says on this piece of paper that I've got 30 days to respond. So I'm just going to respond and say why I don't think that this is a valid case, a valid lawsuit. And then we'll just take it from there. That's all I have to do today. Whereas, in times when I haven't practiced that perspective, it would lead to this scenario where, you can't even do anything. You kind of freeze, right? And you're just thinking about the scenario, you're complaining about it, you're talking negative, and that just invites more feelings, more frequencies of negativity. So I'd say perspective is a big, big thing. And then coming out of it with something that I call the next right thing. So what's the next right thing that you can do? And I feel like this is really applicable in all areas, whether you're going through a business struggle, a relationship struggle, it could even be mental health, because I speak to a lot of men who have mental health struggles. And sometimes the next right thing you can do, Stoyan, is to just take a shower, right? Like just get up in the morning. You feel like your mental health is not in a good place. So you have an option now. Do I just go back to bed and revisit everything over and over again, or do I try and do the next right thing? So next right thing, it doesn't have to be a big, big thing, but it can create that momentum. Okay, I'm gonna take a shower and see how I feel, right? So you take that shower and you're like, okay, cool. What's the next right thing after that? Okay, maybe I have something to eat, right? And actually, a lot of the time, by the time you have something to eat, you realize, oh, maybe I was just hungry. Maybe that was the issue, right? Maybe I'm not really stressed at all. So I think that next right thing approach, it's simple, but it's really served me to navigate seasons where I felt like I was becoming overwhelmed, or there was a lot of things going on, even with my health condition, right? What's the next right thing that I can do today? Okay, the next right thing that I can do today is, just go to school and see if I feel okay to go to school. If I don't, I'll just stay home tomorrow. But I'm going to give it a go. So I think everyone is able to think of a next right thing action that is so simple, but often we don't do it when we're allowing our minds to take us in all directions.
That's a wonderful suggestion, man. I'm just thinking about it, and it kind of helps you to release the pressure.
Yeah,
It's like, this is my decision. I have to focus my full energy on the next right thing, as opposed to, you know, getting over and over, overthinking in your head. Oh, what should I do? Should I do this? Maybe like, and then you do nothing, right? So what's the next right thing I should do?
yeah,
Then all your energy goes towards the next right thing, and you're feeling, I'm making progress.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. And it's that whole idea of controlling the controllables, right? Because our mind wants to take us to the place of the uncontrollables that you can't influence. I cannot influence, who is going to be judging the case in my lawsuit. I can only influence what I have to do to respond to the lawsuit. So if you focus on those things that you can control, I think that definitely builds momentum, like you say, and then all of a sudden you're feeling accomplished, and the thing that felt, that big earlier is now feeling much smaller.
One of the first things I do when I feel overwhelmed and stressed and I have a lot on my plate is I get a notebook or I open a Word file and I start journaling. And
Yeah.
I'm exactly asking this question: what bothers me? What stresses me? What
Mm,
concerns me? And I just write anything that comes to
yeah.
my mind. And as you said, that's really helps me. Is I try to split all the answers into two columns. On the left side, I write down which of those things are within my control,
Yeah.
and then on the right side, what are the things that are out of my control. And because I'm a very structured mathematical kind of person and I love spreadsheets, I would usually kind of, for each of those things I can control, I'll be like, okay, what is the impact from 1 to 10? What is the kind of the impact? 10 is the highest, 1 is the lowest. Okay, good. Let me grade them. Great. Now, for the things that I can control, what could I do? If I'm to start resolving it, what could I do? And I'm like, okay, well, I don't know. Well, I can call Winston. Winston, maybe, okay, call Winston. I don't know what to do, but call Winston and try to figure it out.
Yeah,
Uh, okay, so I'll come up with a few actions, and then I look into the okay, what are the things I cannot control? Okay, you know, how can I see differently?
yeah,
How can I? What's good about it? Is there an opportunity hidden in this situation? Because I
yeah,
cannot control it. Can I stop worrying so much about something I have no control over? Like
yeah.
just by this simple 15-minute journaling and organizing my thoughts, I'm like, okay, now I know what I should do and what are the things I should not worry about at all.
Yeah, no, I really like that exercise, and it's also reminded me of something else that I've done in the past, similar to journaling, like you shared, and kind of finding ways to understand your thought patterns, which is what you're describing. Another thing that I've done, not so much in writing, but I use like a voice note, Stoyan. And so in the voice note, I will say, okay, fine, let me allow my mind to run away for a second. And so I'm going to voice the worst case scenario. I'm going to say it out loud and record it. And so, worst case scenario could be, if you're going through, I don't know, some kind of business issue. Maybe you didn't get this big project that you wanted to get. Maybe it fell through, right? And so, okay, worst case scenario could be, okay, now the project has fallen through. I'm not going to be able to pay my team. My team are going to walk away. My business is going to collapse. You know, I will not be able to afford my rent. Me, my wife, and my child will get kicked out of our house. We're going to be homeless, begging in the street. And so you just say all of these things out loud. And then I dare you to just replay that recording and hear how ridiculous it sounds.
I never thought about it, man. That is so cool. This is
Go
such a
go all the way to the end of that thought. That go as negative as you can. Give yourself a full 3 minutes just to get it all out of your system, because that's what's happening in your subconscious. That's why you feel overwhelmed. So just get it out and then hear how incredibly silly it sounds
I'm
when you
even
say it
I'm
out
even
loud.
thinking that could be good to, everybody does it individually, and you get with a circle of good friends and everybody plays the recording.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Put it in the group chat with your friends.
Oh man, that's so good. That is so good. Yeah, great too. Great too. But it's true, man. I was doing some research for our upcoming book. We're writing a book with my co-author Cristobal Alonso. We write a book called "Perform in Times of Crisis."
Yeah.
So leadership in times of crisis, very much focused on entrepreneurship and startup founders. How do you deal with that as a leader? Um, and and I was reading some articles about negative self-talk and how much more powerful it is, and how many positive thoughts you have to create and generate to be able to outweigh all the one negative thought. Like how much more powerful is the negative self-talk, and also the percentage of negative self-talk we are having. I don't know who was that, the quote. You can probably help me out, but somebody said if somebody listens to our self-talk, everybody should be put into madness house.
Yeah, I've heard that before. I've heard that before. And I've also heard the one that says 80% of the thoughts that we have are negative. I think we have something like almost 100,000 thoughts in a day or something like that. My numbers are probably completely wrong, but 80% of that huge number that pass through our mind are negative thoughts. And like you say, you have to work that much harder to amplify the 20%. And also your mind, because your brain is designed as a survival device. It just wants to make sure that you survive, which is why, if you see something moving in the corner, like, you quickly turn around because your brain wants to make sure that, hey, there's not a predator, in my house, even though it's very unlikely that there's going to be a predator in your apartment. But that's just how we're wired, to be hyper aware of potential dangers. And so now that you're having this huge number of crazy thoughts, it's very easy for your mind to just focus and stay there. And then you forget that, oh, okay, on that day when I lost the big project, I also got, you know, nominated for an award, or, my child did really well in her, you know, maths paper, for example. I don't know. My child is 2 years old. She's not doing math yet. But you forget everything else that happened because you focus in that place where you focus on the darkness.
I'm always thinking and imagining, right? So
Hmm.
what if you can choose how you act, and you can install in your system, let's say, I don't like this 80% negative self-talk. I want to do it 20, and then just install a new software, right?
Mm,
How would your life quality change? Right, because we want the negative self-talk. We don't want it to be 100% positive, because of course we want to be aware, of
yeah.
course we want to, but what is the percentage, right? And I'm just wondering how much your life quality is gonna, because I mean, let's be honest, we spend so much time with ourselves. Who is the person you spend most time with? Yourself. So if you don't master the self-talk, and I'm not saying you and me are, like the masters of self-talk, like we're just talking about, right? But like, just imagine, what if you can take control.
Yeah. Yeah. And exactly. And I think that's a big part of personal development, and even this conversation that we're having now, is how do we try and almost like override the default wiring of our brain and actually just turn the dial a little bit more to the positive and see what impact that has. Um, and I think it's actually the same strategies that we mentioned a little bit already. So, like the journaling, the doing the next right thing, the going to therapy. I've tried therapy, a few times now. I've been doing it since 2021 was the first time that I did it.
just
Um,
just just, just for the statistics, we had a conversation 2020. I don't know if that impacted your
yeah, so your conversation put me in therapy. But I thank you for that because it was very beneficial space where I learned a lot about myself and became even more self-aware. But yeah, it's those kind of
You're welcome. You're welcome.
it's those practices that we keep hearing about, but sometimes it just sounds like noise. But you just have to find something that works for you. Not everyone gets the full benefit out of therapy. Some people go to therapy and they're like, no, not for me. Something that is specific to myself that is really, really simple also is I have something called, and this was inspired by one of my mentors who actually passed away a few years ago, but he inspired something called a when life works list. So all that is just like a list of, it can be any number, 10, 20 things that just make you feel good instantly. So for me, it could be things like, I like getting a haircut. The day I get a haircut, I feel really good. I feel like I'm ready, to model New York Fashion Week, like call me. I'm ready. And it's something that I wasn't really aware of until I started making that list. Another maybe weird thing is I really like when my car is clean. So like when I take my car to like, to the valet, and they hoover and they clean, and my car's all shiny and looking brand new again, that makes me feel really, really good. And so you have like things that are very specific to you, like those are very specific to me. And then when you're in that situation when, I don't know, you get a lawsuit, let's say somebody gets a lawsuit. Um, and you can kind of go back to that, when life works list and be like, okay, I've got an opportunity. I could carry on complaining about this to my wife for, an hour, 2 hours, or I haven't had a haircut in a while. Let me go get a haircut, right? And see what that does for my self-esteem, or if it gives me some momentum, or just kind of pulls me away a little bit from that negative thought pattern and starts rewiring my mind, like we were talking about.
Right, you're breaking the pattern.
Yeah,
You're immediately showing to yourself, I care for you. You deserve it. You des- you're abundant.
yeah, yeah. I think that, yeah, there's something. I think that's a good point. There's something about compassion there as well, right? Self-compassion, and actually saying, "Hey, it's like when you fall over or when you hurt yourself when you're a child, and your parent or whoever's looking after you comes and they just hold you, like they can't make the pain stop, but they just hold you and say, "Hey, it's gonna be all right." They wipe your tears away, you know, whatever. And it's just that compassion that we also need to learn to extend to ourselves, if that makes sense. And so that for me, that's what the when life works list, that's what it becomes for me.
I see it like a, like a muscle, like literally similar to exercising, going to the gym, like physical exercise, right? I see this as a mental exercise. Um, you are biologically wired to seek the negative and to seek for any potential threat,
Yeah,
and so you can survive. uh However, you can train your mind, you can train yourself to act differently. I mean, emotions, thoughts, feelings, all these things are some sort of signals. If you think about it, I mean, any emotion that comes to you, it serves a purpose.
yeah,
Fear, okay, there's a purpose in fear, right? Danger, it could be potential danger, doesn't
yeah,
mean danger. They could be potential danger. uh, Jealousy, uh, anger, all these emotions serve a purpose. The question is, how much time do you spend in them? And I think for me, it's always, I'm a mathematician. I'm gonna, you keep going with the lawsuit, I keep going with my mathematical brain. But it's like, I come from mathematics, man. It's for me, it's like, how can you maximize and optimize the model? How do I spend the least time in negative energy and
yeah.
only use the negative emotions when I need them, when they need to give me a signal? um it was a huge eye opener for me when I attended the 10-day silent retreat called Vipassana. Have you done one of
Mm.
these yourself?
No, I haven't. I think I read one of your posts where you mentioned it.
Mm. Well, many people have done it these days. It's quite popular, and you can pretty much sign up anywhere across the world. Um, Now, it's not about the silence. Silence is part of it, but it's the teachings that you learn there, and the technique, the meditation technique. I cannot give you the wisdom for 25 centuries and the 10 days I experienced myself, but I can give you a couple of things from there. The main purpose, one of the main purposes of the technique that they teach you, is to decrease the time in which you're not aware. So basically, an emotion, a thought, a feeling comes to you. So you immediately get aware and bounce back to a place of equanimity or calmness.
Got it.
And that's the purpose. It's not that, sometimes it's not going to be immediately, right? I mean, might be 2 hours, might be a day. You're thinking about the lawsuit. But it's like, if it was a day last week, could it be 6 hours next week? Like, how can you be faster in getting control over your emotions and negative self-talk, so you can bounce back to a more productive place? Because at
Right.
the end of the day, yes, events are happening, and some events you cannot control, and you cannot even influence them. What you can do, though, is to manage yourself better.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's again, and I really like the idea of actually just going somewhere where you can actually focus only on your thoughts, because we say our thoughts are like really important because they translate into our actions and our behaviors. But I think there's not many people who are taking the step that you took to actually go away and focus purely on their thoughts. Like, and maybe it's the culture that we live in. We're kind of, there's a bias towards like action, like let's just go and do some stuff. Um, but I really like that idea of just interrogating the thought, understanding it, and then shortening the cycles of the negative thoughts, so that with each repetition, it's getting shorter and shorter, right? And you're able to bounce back quicker. So that's, I need to see if there's something like that where I live, because that sounds like something that I would actually enjoy, because I spend a lot of time. So one of my practices in the morning is I just like quiet time. So, I'm Christian. And so for me, that spirituality and that space just to center and, in my case, connect to God, or in somebody else's case, just whatever higher power or spirituality that you practice is the closest that I can get to what you're saying, because that also brings up things from, my emotions, my subconscious, my anxieties, and I have that space to say, okay, here's what it is, and I'm aware of it, and I can either do a next right thing with it, or I can just let it pass because there's nothing to be done for now. So yeah, I like the idea of extending that into something more deliberate and seeing if that could accelerate the process of understanding one's thoughts.
And on this same topic, maybe we can dive into a quote of yours, which is kind of like your motto. You can talk about it. It's actually the title of the episode, but I love it. It's your limitations are an illusion.
Hmm.
Explain to me, what is this concept? When did you come up with it, and what do you mean by that?
Yeah, so this was something, actually, I can't take the full credit. I think it was something that I was speaking to one of my mentors, and I think it's something that, as we were having this conversation, it's something that, how something just gets mentioned in a conversation. Oh, da 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 da, because I realized that, your limitations are an illusion, da 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 da. And I was just about to carry on going. And he said, hold on, like, you said something really important there. um, and I realized that, as we started to unpack it together, is one of the one of the things that have one of the things that has shown up consistently in my life, and I think many people relate to this, it's not unique to me, is whenever, I've set myself a challenge, or something felt like really big to me, and then you go ahead and you do it, or you learn how to do it, or, it could be, for example, when I worked in corporate, moving jobs felt like a really big deal. So it was like, oh, I've applied for this new job, and it just feels like a really big deal. I really want the job, and I think I did the interview really well, and then now you're waiting, and it feels like if I get this job, this will be like the best thing in the world. Like, oh my god, like it's like winning the lottery, right? And then you get the job, and you're like, oh, okay, it's just another job with its own, challenges, things that you enjoy, things that you don't enjoy. But what I came to realize was we tend to set these things up, these goals on a pedestal, and they feel like limitations, like, oh, like I'm not ready to apply for that senior position, or, you know if you're looking for a relationship, I'm not ready to talk to that boy or that girl, whatever. It feels like such a big deal, right? And then you get there and you're like, oh, okay, I did that. And I like that idea because it reminds me that I also have evidence of other big things that I've done, that or other things that I've done that I felt really big at the time. And when I look back, I'm like, oh yeah, like, yeah, I worked for that company, I worked for the other company. I'm married, I've got a kid now. These are all things that felt humongous at one point. And so for me, it's just that reminder of, you know, first of all, the things that we put on a pedestal are not normally as big as we make them out to be. And secondly, like, if you look back in your life, you have achieved, you have succeeded, you have grown in so many different ways. And that should actually be almost packaged and used as evidence to go for the next thing. And to be honest, when I really like boil down my message, whether I'm speaking about disability advocacy or whether I'm speaking about, leadership and high performance, that's kind of what it boils down to. It's, how can we package the evidence of our previous accomplishments and use it as momentum for the next thing, because we all have it, big or small. Not all of us are going to win the Nobel Prize, but we all did something at school, or we all did something in the home today, or we all did something that we're secretly proud of that nobody knows about, right? And so, how can I use that to give me a bit of momentum, a bit of confidence for the next one?
I want to try to read your mind a little deeper, and I want you to imagine you are faced with the next big thing. Okay, there's something that you are not feeling confident about. It's a very stretch goal. It's it's scary.
Yeah.
It's you're afraid to even dream about it. What's your mental process? What is how do you get yourself to attack this goal?
Mm. Yeah, no, that's a great question. I would say, and this probably goes back to my planning process for my goals. So the approach that I use, and it's something that both me and my wife use, is I guess you could call it like a one thing type of framework. I mean, there's that famous book by Carl Newport, I believe. Um, and
The one thing is a book by Gary Keller and Jay
sorry,
Papasan. We actually had Gary on the podcast, and the one that you're talking about probably is Deep Work.
oh, deep work. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Deep
Sorry, yeah. I
Work.
sometimes
Mm.
get those two, but I love both books.
They're great. They're great.
Yeah, and so the one thing for me is where we set, like you say, a stretch goal. So going back a couple of years, during the pandemic, one of our stretch goals, my wife and I, was we said, you know what, we're gonna get married and then we're gonna move to America, right? And so, which is a big goal as it is, at any time, to get married and then to move to a different country, a different continent for us, is pretty big deal, especially when you don't really have any connections over there. It's just something that you wanted to experience and to try. And so yeah, we just set it as our goal for the year. And also, what was unique about this year was it was 2020. So we set our goal beginning of 2020, not knowing that in March there was going to be this, huge pandemic thing that changes everything forever. Um, but I think the way that we attacked it, and this is my mindset as well, is you take that big thing and you try and divide it into more bite-sized chunks, which is an approach that we've all had. And I think dividing it into bite-sized chunks is something that we can all do, but I think the bigger challenge is avoiding distractions, learning to say no to everything else almost, right? And so, in that year, we knew we were going to get married. We were not even engaged yet at the time. So we said, okay, in Q1, we're going to look at wedding venues. We haven't even spoken to a family, anything like that. We're just gonna go look at wedding venues. If we find something that we like, we're not gonna mess about. We're just gonna book it, and that's what we did. At the same time, I was looking into what are our options for emigrating to the US. I'm not a US citizen. I needed to find a path or a visa that would allow us to go there, and of course, allow us to live and to work in the US. So I came across this visa, but the visa said you need to be a person of extraordinary ability, and I was like, "Ooh, that sounds like a huge, step up." Because I looked at the other people who'd been awarded this visa. It was like Justin Bieber, Adele. It was, yeah, and I was like, yeah, my
And
name I've
Winston.
never been
Yeah, of
mentioned next
course.
to
Yeah.
just.
Justin Bieber, Winston, like yeah, the same
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
crowd. Yeah.
Winston, Justin
Mm.
Bieber, yeah, that just rolls off the tongue, right? Um, so I thought, okay, cool. Again, this sounds really, really big. It sounds a little bit crazy. I should not be trying for this. But I thought, okay, what's the next thing I can do? I was recommended an immigration attorney in the US. And I said, okay, looks like he does free consultation. Let me just do the consultation. The worst thing you can do is say, come on, who do you think you are, Justin Bieber? Like, go away, right? So I have the consultation, and the guy, he looks into my background, he looks into like the work that I do as a speaker, and he says, actually, I think you might be able to come in as a speaker who advises companies on diversity and inclusion, because it looks like you've done TED Talks and you've got articles and all this other evidence that would really support your case. And I was like, wow, me and Justin Bieber. Here we go. And so, I'm not gonna give you the blow by blow, but fast forward, by the end of the year, we'd taken these big actions, every so we broke it down to every quarter, every month, every week. And it required saying no to so many other projects, saying no to coaching opportunities, one-to-one coaching was something that we'd considered before, but we thought this is just going to take up too much of our time when we need to be planning a wedding and planning how to move to a different country. So I think for me, it's those two ideas of breaking it down, which most people are good at, but also figuring out ways to just say no to everything else that does not align to the one thing.
When I had a conversation with Jay Papasan, the co-author of The One Thing, obviously he would recommend you over and over again that you have to identify what's your one thing.
Yeah.
And for the people listening who haven't read the book, there is a special focus question that they have, which is, what's the one thing I can do such that by doing it, everything else is easier or necessary?
Yes,
You
exactly.
identify the one thing, but then when I had a conversation with Jay, he he said, Stoyan, that the hardest thing is protecting your commitments. When you say this is the one thing, how do you learn to set boundaries and say no to pretty much everything else, so you can fully focus on this one thing, whatever it is for you? In your case, it was me and Justin Bieber, kind of.
Hanging out,
Yeah,
making
yeah,
music.
exactly. Right, but whatever it is, right? It could be, I want to I want to grow my speaking presence in the US market. I mean, you've been kicking ass, right? Like going to events and stages, but again, it's a different ball game,
Yeah,
right? So that maybe that's the one thing. And if you say that's the one thing, then it's going to be much easier for you to make progress if you can fully focus on this one thing.
yeah, yeah. No, I definitely agree. And defending the one thing, and maybe we can talk about that. Maybe some practical ways that you can defend that. Um, because for me, that was the most challenging thing. So, and maybe I'll just share like one or two ideas from those goals that I mentioned. So, like with us wanting to get married in 2020, um, it was we wanted to get married quickly. So we hadn't even been together that long. I think we'd been together for about 3 months, but we just knew. I mean, we had a long friendship before that, before we got into a relationship. So we were just arriving at a place where we were sure about each other, and we just knew that okay, this is a commitment that we want to make, and it also allows us to really start to build our lives together. So it kind of ticks the boxes of the one thing. It just makes everything else easier, and it just feels leveraged. And so I guess one of the ways we defended with that was, you know, and I remember the proposal. Maybe I'll tell you a quick story about the proposal. We hadn't really spoken to any one of our family to kind of tell them what we were thinking, because we knew it that if we invite these opinions too early, then people will say all the right things. They'll say, "Hey, you've been together just 3 months. What are you doing? Maybe you should get to know each other a bit longer. Oh, and you want to move to a different continent straight after that? Come on, like this, you guys are crazy. Like you're doing too much." So we just trusted our instinct and trusted, what we felt was the right thing for us. And so with the proposal, I remember I called my wife's dad, my father-in-law, the day before, and I said he was supposed to be coming to lunch the next day with my family, and I said to him, "Oh, you know that lunch thing I invited you to? It's actually our engagement. So make sure you show up because me and your daughter we're getting engaged tomorrow. I'd love for you to be there, but even if you're not there, this train is leaving tomorrow, kind of thing. So I hope you're there." And so, some people might say, okay, that's a bit, maybe you didn't give them enough time to process everything. But for us, and also understanding family dynamics and how people are protective and how people want to, you know, give you time to think about big decisions because that's how they operate. We knew that that wouldn't work for us and our one thing. And so that's what happened. They came the next day, and my father-in-law wanted to talk about it and said, oh, are you sure you've given this enough thought? Maybe you should reconsider. And I was like, no, we're sure. She's sure as well. We're happy. And in the end, it was like, okay, fine. I give you my blessing. And so, for us, that's one thing that I would say is really protecting the voices that you allow into that decision once you yourself have gone through a process of becoming sure. Like really protect the voices and the sounds that can become echo chambers for something that pulls you in the opposite direction of your one thing.
Maybe here is a good place to mention the importance of allowing yourself to have pieces and space for thinking time. It's really difficult to come up with these realizations unless you create space in your calendar, your agenda to process and to think and to just reflect. And I
Yeah.
wonder if you have any specific strategies yourself, like what do you do on a daily, on a weekly, on a monthly basis, so you can think and strategize.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess with my planning process, I think the one thing is pretty much the philosophy that kind of flows through, whether it's at the annual level, the quarterly level, the monthly, the weekly, and the daily. So even for each day, I have, my one thing for each day. And what I try to do is there should be a clear through line from what I'm doing today to what I want to be achieving in a year's time. And so if I look at, my to-do list or what's on my calendar for today, one of the things that I really practice is like leverage no's. So, if there's five things that I'm doing and only two of those things align with my one thing for the year, then I will either postpone the other three things to later in the week because I like to do the most important thing early in the week. Or I'll also just interrogate those other things and say, do I actually really need to do this at all? It could be a meeting that I said yes to 6 months ago, but now that it's here, I'm like, actually, no, that is so far off the direction that I'm going that I'm either going to delay it for another 6 months or just say no, thank you. This is not for me at this time. So yeah, it's that I would say it's that alignment, and you should be able to see from your to-do list today align to where it takes you in a year's time.
Winston, I just want to, before we finish this conversation, to dive into a little bit of a different topic. I
Yeah.
know you're yourself an entrepreneur, and you often work with entrepreneurs. You're setting up mastermind groups, you're mentoring, coaching them. What do you find are the biggest struggles and challenges of entrepreneurs, of founders, especially when it comes to limiting beliefs?
Yeah, do you know what? A lot of the entrepreneurs that we have worked with in our master classes, they come in with problems that appear to be tactical, but actually behind it is problems that are more about, mentality and, beliefs that they have and the self-talk that they carry. So I'll give you an example. So some of the entrepreneurs that we worked with, they're actually, older than me. So they're more my parents' age, people in their 50s and their 60s, right? And so one of the typical complaints that we'll get or the challenges that they'll present is, well, in my generation, we didn't really use technology, right? So, it'll be things like, okay, yeah, but there's so many systems that I need to learn. This is why I feel like I'm not making progress. Um, in my business or whatever thing that I'm trying to launch. And then be like, okay, fine. That's actually a very easy problem to solve. Like you could either choose to land it to yourself or we could even outsource that piece of work for you very, very cheaply. And then they're like, and then you can see the resistance now because that was the excuse, right? And now I'm saying to you, you don't have to worry about MailChimp or Zapier or any other integration anymore. And they're saying, no, I need to learn it. I wanna invest the time to learn it. But you haven't learned it in the last 1 year, 2 years. So what makes you think that you're gonna want to learn it now? So what we find is that people hide behind the tactical things when it's actually a mindset thing. And then when you dive into it, it's okay. I'm not ready. I'm embarrassed to change my LinkedIn title because my boss at work is going to see that I'm doing something else, right? So now this is something to do with imposter syndrome. So a lot of the coaching calls that we have is actually speaking to people and discovering that they have imposter syndrome, they have negative self talk, they're afraid of what their family, their friends are going to think. And I would say it's almost like an 80-20 split where 80% of the work that we do is on the mindset side of things. And 20% is the tactical side, like which tool should I use to schedule my social media? Oh, it's like, yeah, just use this. And if you don't want to do it, here's a VA who can help you do it at a very affordable price. So yeah, that's what I've seen.
That's right, man. When you update the operational system, everything else falls in place. It might take a bit, but
Yeah.
it will fall in place eventually. And here is another question. What's your take on limiting beliefs? Maybe from your experience, you can maybe give an example even. How do we how do we transform a belief that's limiting us? Like a lot of people say, I'm just this way. I was born this way, I was raised this way, and it's very difficult for me to, I know it logically, but to change my belief system. How do we transform beliefs into more empowering ones?
Yeah, honestly, this is something that I think about a lot, and I think my view kind of keeps changing on this. I think where I've got to now is if someone says to me, like, I've got this negative belief system, I know I should transform it, but I don't think I can because it's just the way I am, right? I think one of the first questions I would ask is, okay, are you happy with where you are in life? If you're happy with where you are in life, whether it's in your business, relationship, your health, whatever, if you're happy, then you actually don't have to do anything, right? Like you're good, just carry on. Because sometimes I think we're very quick to try and, change things and, try to do something different and force people to be like us. But not everyone's like me or you, Stoyan. So if you're happy with the results that you're getting, then by all means carry on. My issue is when you're not happy with the results that you're getting, and at the same time you don't want to do something different. Because if you, it's inputs outputs, right? You know this. You're a mathematician, Stoya. Like the equation has to balance. Like if you're putting the same thing, you're gonna get the same output. And so for me, if you're now at a stage where you're prepared to even just if we call it an experiment, hold on to your belief. Your belief is your baby. Fine. You've had this baby since you were little, right? And you wanna, you feel attached to that. Fine. How about we call it an experiment where you try and do something different just this one time, and then if it doesn't feel like it's getting you to a more positive place, a more progressive place, please run back to what you're doing before, right? And so I think sometimes it's just language and kind of taking the stigma out of it having to be, I know this is episode 180, making people avoid that feeling that they're doing a whole 180 in their life and actually feel like, okay, we're just going to run a little experiment. How about you work on your business for 20 minutes a day? That's it. That's it. And do that this week and then see how you feel after that. And I think when we use that language of experimentation, it kind of lowers the barrier to entry. It makes it more accessible. And people are prepared to almost take that step knowing that, okay, I'm just going to try this out. But if it doesn't work, I've still got my, the devil that I know over here, if that makes sense. So that's one approach that I've used because I found that sometimes it's very hard when someone is in that mindset of this is just who I am. It's not always easy to get them to do a complete U-turn. So you kind of have to frame it as an experiment or something that they get to try. And if it doesn't work, they can go back to what they know.
That's a great explanation, man. I was just thinking for an example, uh, like an example could be a belief, right? Nobody from my family was ever an entrepreneur. So I probably will never be successful as one
Yeah.
because I don't have the genes, I don't have the background, the
Right.
upbringing, right? Like that could be a belief. Now, if you're happy with it, and you work for a company, you're a family person, fine, great. I mean, but if you're the person who really wants to succeed as an entrepreneur and you hold on to this belief, I mean, the step number one, you got to be aware. Like, I think myself included, so many people haven't really deeply looked into what are the beliefs that are driving my behavior. Like, get it out of your head, put it on a piece of
Mm,
paper, and just, what are the beliefs that drive my behavior? What do I believe in? What is the algorithm, right? Because we
right.
make decisions based on the beliefs that we believe in about ourselves, about our environment, about the world. Bulgarians, Eastern Europeans, uh, there's a stereotypes in Western Europe that I'm a Bulgarian, so I should probably not be, it's going to be harder for me.
Right.
Well, this is a belief. This is a belief. And is it empowering me to take action
Mm-hmm.
and to go where I want to go? It's not even about is it true, like objectively. It's about is that helping me?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I agree. And I listen sometimes to The Diary of a CEO by Steve Bartlett, the podcast. And he talks about, building self awareness around, are you being driven or are you being dragged by your beliefs? And I think that kind of came to my mind when you were speaking, because when we have these beliefs, like, for example, I was born in this country, so it's going to be harder for me. That type of belief will drag you in a particular direction where, you probably play it safe or you don't take the chances that you should, versus a belief of, okay, fine, this is my background, but I'm actually driven to do bigger, to do better, to to do more than my family did, my father, my uncle, whoever. All of those people who are not entrepreneurs before, or maybe even all of those people who never went to school or university before. Maybe I'll be the first one to go to university, right? And so that's something that drives you. It's a motivator. It's something that you're pursuing as opposed to something that is dragging you. It's almost like if you imagine somebody's tying, like, I don't know, like a chain around your leg and they're pulling you in this direction. You don't want to go there, but you just feel like, your fate is almost sealed to go in that direction. And so for me, what feels empowering is to go after something that drives me, that I'm pursuing. And there's no guarantees that you're gonna make it as an entrepreneur, or have a get a first class degree at university, but I think you learn a lot in that pursuit, and you grow, and you get closer to the best version of you, rather than someone who just played it safe and relived the life of their father or their grandfather, or their great grandfather, who were around 100 years ago. There's no need to relive that life.
Yeah, that's true, man. And even if you don't succeed on your endeavor, when you were bold, when you acted from a place of strength, it just feels good. It just feels like, okay, I gave it my all. It
Yeah,
didn't work out,
yeah,
but you know what? I made the decision,
okay,
and you feel aligned. You
yeah,
you you actually build confidence.
yeah, yeah.
Amazing, man. Winston, brother. It's been 64 minutes already. Crazy
Oh,
how
wow.
we went there, but like I just want for like a final sort of like wrap up of the whole episode, to if you can sort of like give a final closing message, what would be your message to the people out there listening right now that are maybe struggling, that don't believe in themselves, maybe have that some big dreams, but they they feel like they have too many obstacles, and it's really hard to get where they want to be? What will be your final message?
Yeah, maybe something that I would have needed like 5 years ago or 6 years ago, when I was starting on my journey as a speaker, and just generally in business for myself, is letting go of the need to be understood. Because I feel like I had these ideas of, I want to be independent, I want to build something meaningful. I want to make an impact in the world. But one of the things that held me back the most was thinking, is my family going to understand? Are my friends, all of whom are working in corporate jobs, are they going to understand? And so for me, it was really liberating, or it would have been really liberating to just kind of let go of that need to be understood by people and just, like we were talking about, just pursue the thing that drives me. Because at the end of the day, as they say, you can't please everyone. And so, yes, that need to be understood is something that we put a lot of value on. But if you boil it down, is it really that important? What your auntie who you see every Christmas thinks of you quitting your job to start your business. It's actually not that important. So yeah, letting go of that need to be understood.
Amazing, man. And finally, maybe there's people listening who are looking for speakers, who are looking for somebody to help them, coaching them, mentoring them. Can you just with a few words share with us how can you support people? How can people get in touch, and how can you help them?
Yeah, the two things that I'm really passionate right now is around disability advocacy. So going into companies and I guess sharing ideas and best practices as to how they could support their communities or people with disabilities so that they can thrive and be the best versions of themselves. And then the other thing that I'm super passionate about is what we're talking about with entrepreneurs, people who, especially people who are kind of transitioning from a corporate or a 9 to 5 career into being independent. And so the best place to find me for all of those things is probably my website, winstonclements.com. So if you start there, it's got all of my social medias. Feel free to find me, drop me a direct message, and hopefully I'll be able to support you, even if it's just pointing you to a resource, that might be beneficial for you as an individual or as a company.
Brother, you're an inspiration. I give you that. I mean, I'm so grateful for you. I just wanted to take this moment to say thank you for the incredible work that you do, the impact that you are creating, not just to the communities with disabilities, but to everybody, myself included, helping us to dream bigger, to act bold, and to crush all limitations on the way. So thank you so much, brother. It's been an honor having you again.
No, I appreciate you, Stoyan, and thank you for creating this space for people to come and, get access to this information. These are the conversations that, 10, 20 years ago, these were had in private rooms, where nobody had access. So I love that you're creating this space for people to, freely access, conversations like this that will hopefully help them and inspire them. And we learn a lot as well by talking to each other.
Absolutely. So if anybody listening enjoyed this episode, make sure to check out Productivity Mastery on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all other major platforms. I'm sure you'll find something that you can resonate with. And of course, every time somebody subscribes, helps us to bring even, like people like Winston and other amazing people to the podcast. So thank you for the support, and wishing everybody an amazing day. See you once again next time for another episode of Productivity Mastery. Ciao.